Okay, so the topic today is a log cabin quilt pattern, which is a great way to use up your scraps. This was something that was asked by Beth. What I did is a simple search. And what did I search for? I searched for log cabin quilt pattern. Google is one of those animals that you have to have the right words. So you would have to sort of guess what someone would be calling their image so that you can find it. So the log cabin quilt pattern, if you just simply search for log cabin, you're going to get wooden homes. You're not going to get just the quilt pattern. So log cabin quilt pattern gets me a little bit closer to what I need to go to. And this is usually what the search looks like, and you've got a bunch of text down here. If I'm just looking for pictures, I click on this little link here called images, and it gives me just images. I have a couple little options here where there must be some additional words describing some of the pictures in this group, but I'm going to leave it right where it's at. And there were a couple that I wanted to point out. This one in particular, I really like that one. There's something, was it Gustav Klimt about that one? It looks like the squares are different sizes, but they're not. It has to do with the light, medium, and dark on the outside edge, which is causing that sort of little special effect. So that's a great one to kind of look at, although it's not really a log cabin, is it? No, it's just squares. So let's go back to log cabin. There's different types of patterns. It was on this page, and I haven't changed this page, so it should still be here. One thing you'll notice with a Google search is you'll search one day for it, and the next time you search for it, you'll get something completely different, or the next person who's searching will get something completely different. So you can't always rely on the same things being there. This little image right here, they've got it identified as a real log cabin and then my log cabin. And I would recommend, just for symmetry, probably using the My Log Cabin design. The reason for that is the real log cabin is designed for the quilting process. Well, we're rug hookers, so we don't have to pay attention to the quilting process. So we can hook those shapes however they turn out. We don't have to worry about weird little seams and that type of thing. So I would look for something like this with a little bit more symmetry, and then just start laying it out. I put a link at the top of the chat box with a link to my tutorial on how to draw straight lines on your fabric. And this is the perfect pattern for that lesson. Take your ruler. You're only going to use your ruler for measuring. You're not going to use your ruler for drawing the straight lines. You're going to draw the lines in the ditch of the fabric. If your fabric's crooked, don't worry about it. Draw the straight line in the ditch. When you're done, your rug will be straight. So that's the important thing to remember. And then just figure out what method you're going to use and what design do you want. The quilt pattern is such that you can end up with stripes going down the side. Here they've got it turned in such a way that it creates an Ohio star pattern. It's all going to depend on where the lights and the darks go and how you line those up. Let me see if there was another one that I wanted to point out, and it's not jumping out at me right now. Oh, this one right here. This is kind of fun. This is sort of take the whole square thing and throw it out the window. It's square on the outside edges, but the areas inside are crooked. So that's kind of fun. So if you don't like to hook in perfect straight lines, that might be a fun one for you. Let's kind of get this out of the way. I tend to hook a shape like this, the rectangular shape, rather than hooking them all in straight lines. To me, the easiest way is to hook around the outside edge and then hook slightly inside and go round and round and round until it's full. That's the easiest way. I think it also tends to be the best looking way. You don't have a lot of tails all at one end. It's just more fun to hook, and it's a little bit easier from that point of view. This is kind of fun, where what happens is how they're lined up. This is dark on the inside, this one's light on the inside, and then every row is sort of offset with the light and the dark, and it creates sort of this almost wiggly, crooked kind of a look. Look for variations. One thing that I find that I really like on patterns, particularly patterns like this, where you might have rows that go this way and then rows that go this way at the edge of your rug, be sure to put a border on it. This quilt has a border on it. When you have loops that hit that edge at various angles, and it's not all, evenly, I don't know how to describe this, the tension's going to be different. And what's going to happen is this might push harder on the outside edge, and your outside edge might end up being a little wiggly. But if you put a couple rows of a border, something thick, kind of like this little guy right there, if you do that, then it will even out the outside edge. Now, the effect is going to be least noticeable on rug warp. It's going to be more noticeable on linen, very noticeable on monk's cloth, which I don't even recommend for rugs because of it being so stretchy and hard to hook through, quite frankly. Any questions on what you saw there? I'm sure that you could page down on that, and there's probably tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of images. You're bound to find something that is going to inspire you. Okay, so now we've got sort of the design chosen. We've got to decide on a width. That's where your ruler will come into play, and you'll make just little marks with the ruler, the equal distance apart, depending on how big your bars are for your log cabin quilt pattern. The size is going to be up to you. It should be proportional to the rug to some extent, proportional to your cut size. All that's going to be coming into play. Do not spend the time and get so lost in the weeds that you're counting threads, okay? Because the number of threads going this way and the number of threads going this way per inch usually are not the same. So if you go to the trouble to count the threads, you're automatically wrong. So just use a ruler and guess. I mean, you're going to go one thread over, inside or out, depending on the size of your cut anyways. So it doesn't have to be absolutely board perfect. So we've got the pattern picked out. We've got it drawn because we're using the pencil in the ditch, and then we'll go back with the marker. And when I do the pencil in the ditch for a big geometric like this, I'll do the lines all the way across and basically end up with a grid. And then based on the grid, sit down and draw out the individual squares. I would practice first and make sure you've got at least one square drawn, so you know how many bars it's going to take to make the design look the way you want it to look. And then draw the big squares and then sit down and draw each individual square. That would be the best process for doing that. Now, part of Beth's question was also about the wool. Scraps are the best thing to use for this type of thing. And if you notice from the log cabin, it's strictly a play on light and dark. Now, medium's not really in there. You could define your lights and your darks differently, but you do want a clear split. So there's almost like a section of values in the middle that are not used. So I recommend, if you've got the time and maybe some helping hands, would be to sort your worms out into light, medium, and dark. And come up with like a couple of strips. These are like my, what would you call them? Almost like your key. This is what medium is. So you can take your strip, and if you're unsure, you can hold it up and look, is this medium or is this dark? And then based on what's already there, you can decide what pile it goes in. And then maybe take the medium out and work with just light and dark. You could probably do some pretty fancy things with the medium, but you would have to sit there with like a line drawing and light, medium, and dark values and markers and color them in and play around with what happens when you do a layout in a certain way with that. Quilters tend to do just the two major values. So as far as colors go, you could say every color is invited to every square. You could say, okay, I'm going to hook dark and this particular block is blue. And then as you're hooking, just dig through your darks and pull out all your blues. I would do that kind of as you're going, just so that you're sure that that's the look you like, rather than spending all your time managing your worms. But light, medium, and dark in separate bins will serve you so well. Even further on down the line, you're doing maybe a landscape and you need a dark to go in between the trees of a forest. You don't care what color it is, you just need a dark. So you would rummage through your dark worms and look for the best one you can find. So that's the best way, I think, to handle those with the minimum amount of fussy sorting. You might want to outline the individual blocks. That might be one way to use up your values. Outline it in dark and then play with medium and light, except it's really going to emphasize the bar shape, and you may or may not want that. Part of, I think, of what makes a log cabin quilt so pretty is that on the medium side, those mediums all tend to kind of blend together. So I would go with it and embrace that and stay traditional from that point of view. So let me see if anything else popped up. No more questions. Nothing else in the comments. So I'm going to call that a wrap for now. Beth, I hope that was enough to explain what your questions were. Remember that I'll need a question for next week, so be sure to wait just a few moments or so after I finish this. I always set up the next session right away, and I'll set up that session. You'll notice it because there'll be a little extra dot at the very top. And you can click on that. You'll see the countdown timer. That's how you know you're in the right place. And then go below the video and ask your question. And then I'll be looking for those for next week. So that's it for today. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It means a great deal to me. And I'll see you next week. Thanks.